Okay, this is a metal wire pad that we're going to use to set the beaker on top of. It's got some padding in the middle to distribute heat evenly. This is the beaker. These are beaker tongs. Students would use these to pick up the beaker, kind of like a pair of tongs for like a picking up a hot dog or something off a grill. You would use that if the beaker gets very hot. This is a ring stand. It's got a metal base and just a metal pole coming up out of it. This is a ring stand support. It's got a screw in the back of it and a slot there to slide over the pole. And I'm doing this with one hand, so it's a little difficult. You would normally use two hands to tighten that screw. And now we've been able to position the support at a certain height above the base of the ring stand. Now we take the metal pad and set it there. We're going to place a Bunsen burner, what you see here, below that. The Bunsen burner has a rubber tube which we then attach to a gas line. Fit that on, and then we open the gas. Let's see, I'm not going to open the gas yet. Then we use this is a striker. We use this to actually ignite the gas that comes out of the Bunsen burner once we open up that valve. You can see when you squeeze it, and as you squeeze it, the two pieces, the metal wire rubs across the surface and generates a spark. We would place that over the Bunsen burner when gas is coming out of it, and it ignites the gas. The gas coming out is natural gas, and so it'll ignite if there's a spark. Okay, so here we're going to take the beaker and come over to this carboy. It's just a big jug of water that we use in the lab, and again, I'm doing this with one hand. It's kind of tough. So you open up a spigot and place the beaker underneath, fill it up with some water. Now, the beaker has some markings on it which indicate the volume of water. Now, this may or may not be something you want to focus on, but if you include these markings, then the students could perhaps determine how much water they put in. In this case, it's a little less than 125 milliliters. You can see the mark in between 150 and 100, and then the water line is slightly below that. Now, these markings are not super accurate. Saying that there's a little less than 125 milliliters isn't that doesn't give you that much accuracy, but it is something they could they could adjust the volume of water, add more, pour some out. I don't know how much work you want to put into this demonstration right now. Okay, so at this point we've got everything assembled. We can turn on the gas, and students would do this assembly. They would put the ring stand support, put the pad, fill the beaker with water, put the Bunsen burner underneath, connect it to the gas line, turn on the gas, take the striker, and ignite it. And I'm going to squeeze this here, and there we go. Okay, so you can see the blue flame, and in a moment I'm going to turn out the lights a little bit so you can see it better. But you can see the blue flame there. Okay, now I've adjusted the lights a little bit. The blue flame rises, in this case, a couple inches above the Bunsen burner. This is the right type of flame to have. Now, another thing you could do to make things a little more complicated is include this little collar. Really, it's a metal plate that goes around the Bunsen burner. As you adjust it, you open up a hole in the base. Now when you do that, it actually opens up 2 holes as you rotate it. Notice that the flame becomes a little bit of a brighter blue and it's smaller. Now if I keep rotating it, and it also makes a more of a hissing sound, if you want to include audio with your project. So it makes a little more of a hissing sound. It's a smaller flame. It's not really the best. It's not the It's not the best type of flame to have. So ideally, we could have students adjust that. Now, as you adjust it, you close it a little bit, maybe about 3/4 of the way, and actually, if you keep turning it, you get a yellow flame. It's the color of wood burning. That's not a good flame because it's bigger, but it's not as hot. If you keep adjusting it a little bit more until it's slightly open, then you get that nice flame. And if they keep turning it, you just keep going through that cycle of completely open, you get the intense flame that's really small. Completely closed, you get the yellow flame. Slightly open, you get this nice blue flame that we see here. And that's what we would want to use. You can either have the students adjust it, or you can just have it appear that way automatically. Okay, now at this point, actually, we have a little bit of a problem. I think I'm going to zoom out in just a moment. Yeah, the beaker of water is way too far from that flame. It's going to take forever to get it to boil. So, in this situation, the student would sort of disassemble everything. First, turn off the Bunsen burner because you don't want any open flames around, and start taking things apart. So I took the beaker off, took the pad off. Right now I'm turning off the valve, and that's going to turn off the flame. So there's no more gas coming out, so there's no flame. We're going to unscrew the screw on the support and lower it a little bit. So now it's lowered closer to the Bunsen burner. Retighten it, and then assemble everything. Students may, this is not uncommon for students to have to adjust the height of their ring stand support. It's kind of trial and error. It sort of depends on how big of a flame you end up with. Okay, so now got everything assembled. Turn on the gas. Use the striker. Flame is lit. And so now I think I'm just showing you the flame. It was hard. It's hard. It came through pretty good on the video, but it was looking at the camera screen. It was kind of hard to tell if you could see that blue color. Okay, so now we've got the pad, and we're going to set the beaker on there. And now we wait for the water to boil. This takes actually a very long time. I didn't even get through actually boiling water because it would take like 20 minutes, I don't know, maybe at least 20 minutes, and there was a class that was coming in here, so I had to so I had to cut it off. Now, one thing you could add to this, and I don't know how much work you want to do with this, is to add a thermometer. We might want students to simply measure the temperature of the solution. And you can see at room temperature, it's about 26 degrees. Slightly, it's between the 20 and 30 degree mark. That's about 26 degrees Celsius. You couldn't see the gradations real well. There you go. Okay, now they're in focus. So you can see the little gradations. It's about 26, 27 degrees Celsius. Okay, that's actually a little bit warmer than room temperature, but that's okay. Set it in the beaker, and you can measure the temperature of the water. Now, when you set it in the beaker, the student should always be holding it, and you can see, oh, it wasn't real, the camera wasn't steady, but it looked like it was getting to be 40 degrees, maybe a little more. But you don't want to just leave it hanging there. You always want to hold the thermometer as it's set in the water, because if you don't hold it, it could tip over the beaker of water because it kind of gets top heavy, and then the whole thing falls over, and you got hot water and Bunsen burner gas and stuff like that. So that's not good. And they'd want to hold the thermometer sort of in the middle. The top is kind of cool. The bottom is the hottest. The bottom of the beaker is the hottest. So okay, so now you can look and you can see it's about 42 degrees. And it, this is, I mean, the water didn't heat up that fast, not as fast as this video is playing. There was about probably a 10-minute gap in there. So you can have students periodically measure the temperature of their water if you want to. They set the thermometer down when they're done with it. Okay, now once the temperature reaches about 70 to 75 degrees Celsius, you'll start to see tiny little bubbles at the bottom of the beaker. And if you've ever boiled water in a pot to make spaghetti, you've seen this as well, that the water isn't quite ready, but you do see a few little bubbles form. They're sort of the water in this case is boiling, but only in very, very specific locations. But basically, a little tiny bit of water starts to boil before the rest of the water reaches the real boiling temperature, which is, of course, 100 degrees Celsius. So if you want to model that in your process, you can. Those little bubbles, about a dozen of them might form at the bottom, and occasionally they will release themselves from the bottom of the beaker and float up to the top. They're just little